And welcome back to America Talks Live.
Now let's talk about the Inspector General's report. Republican congressman from North Carolina, he's also the chair of the Freedom Caucus, Representative Mark Meadows, says there's growing evidence that the FBI misled the Justice Department's Inspector General, and even worse, possibly tampered with evidence, specifically what they're called 302s. 302s are FBI witness statement reports. Now, Meadows said he's seen growing evidence that those 302s were, in fact, tampered with, and that the Inspector General needs to look into it. More importantly, and there was something that was left out of the mainstream media coverage of these recent hearings, Inspector General Michael Horowitz conceded the point to Representative Meadows. He said that he too has seen some evidence that the 302s were tampered with. If that's the case, this scandal runs much deeper.
But why would he say this now?
Who's that, Horowitz or
Horowitz.
Meadows? Well, because I think Meadows questioned him on it.
But why not bring that up on your own? It takes someone asking you that question?
That's exactly what I'm saying, and Larry's going to weigh in on this quite a bit. It's why didn't he do it on his own? Why did it require a question while under oath?
Yeah, well, let's find out. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Larry Klayman. He's also the founder of Freedom Watch. As always, good to have you back on the program. So I'm going to pose that question to you. Kind of going to what John was bringing up, why are we just finding about this now? Why did Mr. Meadows have to ask that question to Horowitz to find this out?
About the 302s, Larry. Why did he have to ask Horowitz if 302s were tampered with? Volunteer that information previously.
Well, the answer is simple. I mean, we know what the answer is. This is the IG of the Department of Justice, which is inside of that department, my alma mater, which is covering up for a lot of the one at the higher level is to be held accountable. We found out something that we did.
That we haven't heard is with regards to Peter Strzok, and we're going to get into him, but no one's accused Peter Strzok of doing anything criminally illegal. He's been accused of being biased. He's been accused on these cases. And I assume, my personal assumption, what Meadows is talking about was the Michael Flynn case, because we're hearing rumblings that those 302s, those witness reports were tampered with. If it turns out that it was Strzok who tampered with those, wouldn't that be evidence tampering? Wouldn't that then rise in a perfect world to criminality, Larry?
Yes, it would be obstruction of justice. And if Strzok knew of that, given his oath of office, I mean, to obey the Constitution and the laws of the land, then even if he didn't do it himself, he would adopt the criminal activity on his own and be held accountable. Now, I also know that Strzok was involved with Lisa Page in a matter that I had brought forward to Comey involving mass illegal surveillance. I had brought a whistleblower forward, and apparently he used the word BS. I'm not going to say it on TV. Deep sixing that's obstruction of justice too. And this
who did Larry? Comey or Strzok?
Well, Strzok was working with Comey. See, Comey had his inside circle of henchmen who would do whatever he wants. It was Strzok, it was Page, it was James Baker, the general counsel of the FBI, who's gone at this point, and a bunch of others. And this was his inner circle where Comey was able to effect his own personal actions, which many of which were obviously illegal and inappropriate with regard to the FBI. He had this inner circle, and they're involved in virtually everything, not just Flynn. They're involved in illegally starting the investigation of so-called Russian collusion. They're involved in illegally deep-sixing Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server that we now found out was compromised by foreign sources. And that's important for another case that I have that maybe we could talk about at some other time, against Hillary Clinton for wrongful death of my client's sons, Ty Woods and Sean Smith. Those were the sons at Benghazi who were working with Ambassador Chris Stevens. It was that email account, which obviously was hacked, which gave rise to terrorists finding out the location of these brave heroes. This is going up to the Supreme Court. So there are lots of things that we learned, but the most perplexing thing, actually it's not perplexing, it was completely predicted on my part and some other people's parts, is that the IG basically covered up. He ran interference. He circled the wagons for the elite, the higher ups at the Department of Justice and elsewhere in the Obama administration.
Now, Larry, one of the other takeaways that really jumped off the page at me with regard to these hearings, both the Senate and the House hearing, was the way Christopher Wray downplayed certain things, he and Horowitz, the IG. And what really troubled me was when they dismissed this as, well, it's just a few bad apples in the FBI. This was pretty much the entire 7th floor at the Hoover Building. This was pretty much management. That's the management floor at the FBI. This wasn't a couple of field agents in an Oklahoma field office sending a few texts back and forth. These were the people running the FBI, running the Clinton investigation, running the Russia investigation, with Peter Strzok as the FBI's liaison, as a senior investigator on Mueller's team. Is Wray a bad actor, Larry? Is he trying to whitewash this? Is Wray acting in bad faith? Is he a nefarious actor trying to cover something up, or is he just a guy in over his head who's trying to be liked by the agents and placate Congress?
It's both, actually, John. I think it's mostly the latter. He's in over his head. You're right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, he doesn't have any gravitas. He really had no prior experience of any great magnitude to become FBI director. He knows that if he goes against people inside the agency, that stuff will start to come out of files about him. They'll destroy him. And consequently, he's just trying to get along to go along. But that's not what we need as an FBI director at this time. We need a forceful person who's honest, who's independent, and not basically a yes man like Wray. And that's what he's doing. And I was very disappointed at what he said as well. I think Senator Orrin Hatch asked a good question yesterday, saying, well, if there's that much political bias and improper conduct with regard to these particular investigations of Hillary Clinton and the president, just think what else we're going to find at the FBI. And that's been my experience as well. There are some good agents, but look, they've got to toe the line. They got to do what they're told by the higher ups, or they'll never be promoted.
Right.
Yeah, Larry,
they'll be assigned to the back room.
Yeah, Larry, we're running out of time, but just real quickly, we had 2 days of testimony with Horowitz and Wray. There's talk that Peter Strzok, may take the invitation that's been offered to him.
I think he was trying to avoid his firing.
And do that. I don't know. So, and there's still calls for maybe a second special counsel. Ultimately, what's going to come about from all this? The IG report's been out. We're hearing testimony. Anything?
If you depend on the government, Miranda, nothing. 30 years, nobody's ever been held accountable since I became a public interest advocate at Judicial Watch and even before, and now Freedom Watch, which I run. Nothing will happen. That's why we at Freedom Watch are starting citizens grand juries. You can see that at freedomwatchusa.org. So I've recommended that I be appointed special counsel. But in terms of the Justice Department as it's currently constituted, zip, nothing will happen. This is a dog and pony show. This is entertainment. And that's all it's been for the last